this session. We have three papers in this session, and I would request all the three paper presenters to take 20 minutes each for their presentation, and we will have 5 minutes for discussion, so that we will be able to complete the session by 11 o'clock. Now, I don't want to give my presidential remarks now. Two papers are on Advaita, not Advaita exactly. One speaks about Shankara's absolute monism. The other one is a general paper, Concept of Global Fraternity as Reflected in the Vedas. The other one is Gandhian Doctrines and Universal Spirituality. And I now request Ms. Shakuntala Gowde, Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai, to present her paper on Absolute Monism of Shankara and Spinoza, a comparative study.
My topic is Absolute Monism of Shankara and Spinoza, a comparative study. Shankara's philosophy is known as Kevaladvaita system of philosophy. Baruch Spinoza was a Jewish Dutch philosopher who propounded absolute monism. Eastern and Western civilizations are different, but they have tackled the same philosophical problems, and in solving them, their method and assumptions are strikingly similar. Same is the case with Shankara and Spinoza, as they come under one roof of absolute monism. Though there are some differences peculiar to their philosophies, striking similarities should be noticed when we think about universal spirituality and global harmony. Shankara's philosophy can be given in a nutshell as Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman is the sole reality for him. Diverse things exist on Vyavaharika level, but their validity is negated on Paramarthika level. Diversity is regarded as a creation of Maya or ignorance. Reality of many things is overruled on the basis of Vivartavada, and only one thing is accepted as real, that is Brahman. Therefore, his philosophy is known as Kevaladvaita. Spinoza has propounded substance monism. Spinoza has clearly defined substance as that which is in itself and conceived through itself. In other words, the conception of which does not need the conception of another thing from which it must be formed. Substance can be only one. If there were two substances, they would limit each other and cease to be independent. That is, they would cease to be substances. Hence, there can be only one substance which depends on nothing and on which everything depends. He clearly says that except God, no substance can be conceived. If there were substances except God, it would have to be explained through some attributes of God, and so two substances of the same attributes would exist, which is absurd. Hence, the term substance can be applied to things which exist by themselves. According to Spinoza, God only correctly fits into the definition of substance. Now, ultimate reality in the philosophy of Shankara and Spinoza. Brahman is the ultimate reality for Shankara. Nature of Brahman is explained by Shankara in the sutra, Athato Brahma Jidnyasa. Brahman by nature is eternal, pure, intelligent, omniscient and omnipotent. The word Brahman is derived from the root Brahma, which denote all these meanings. Astitavad Brahma, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Svabhavam, Sarvajna Sarva Shakti Samanvitam, Brahma Shabdasya hi Vitpadyamanasya, Nitya Shuddhatvaadayaha Arthaha Pratiyante, Bruhater Dhator Arthanugamad. Spinoza's substance, that is God, coincides with Shankara's absolute Brahman. Some common threads can be seen as below. Indeterminate reality. Nirguna Brahman is the ultimate reality for Shankara. The word Nirguna here denotes the indeterminate nature of Brahman. Brahman is beyond qualities, words and forms. It is described as neither subtle nor gross, neither short nor long, without birth or change, without form, attributes, color and name. It is described in Atma Bodha, Ananavan, Asthulam, Arasvam, Adirgham, Ajam, Avyayam, Arupaguna Varanakhyam, Tad Brahma Ityavadharayet. Shruti statements like Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma are accepted to denote the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahmana. Shankara's viewpoint is explained by Ramanuja in Mahapurva Paksha of the Sri Bhashya as तत्र सत्यपदं विकारास्पदत्वेन असत्याद् वस्तुनः व्यावृत्तपरं ज्ञानपदं च अन्यधीनप्रकाशात् जडरूपाद् वस्तुनः व्यावृत्तरूपम् अनन्तपदं च देशतः कालतः वस्तुतः च परिच्छिन्नाद् व्यावृत्तरूपम्. Here the word satya means satyetara vyavrutti. Non-existent things are excluded from the definition of Brahman by the word satya. The word jnana points out that things which are dependent on others for the illumination are excluded. The word ananta states that the things which are limited by space, time and material are excluded. Shankara, while commenting on Taittiriya Upanishad, states that words used to define Brahman actually function to differentiate Brahman from other entities that possess opposite qualities. Samana jatiyebhya eva nivartakani visheshanani visheshyasya. So existence is the very essence of Brahman and not attribute in real sense. Brahman is also defined as Satchidanandam. Here also existence, consciousness and bliss are not the qualities of Brahman but the essence of the same. God is having infinite attributes according to Spinoza also. But these attributes are equal to his essence and not the attributes in real sense. So this is quite similar with Shankara's concept of Nirguna Brahman. Now, the second is non-interference. Interference of God in the fate of people is not admitted by Shankara. He has proved this in the commentary over aphorism, Vaishamya Nirgunnena Sapekshatva Tatha Hi Darshayati. Everybody is influenced by his own desires, passions and previous karmas. Spinoza has also stated the same thing. God acts from his laws of his nature alone and is compelled by no one. It means that there is no cause either extrinsically or intrinsically which prompts God to act except the perfection of his nature. Next is omnipotence. God's omnipotence has been actual from eternity and will remain in the same actuality and eternity. This is the proposition of Spinoza. Shankara also in the aphorism Lokavattu Leela Kaivalyam comments that though creation of the universe looks like a gigantic task, it is like a sport of God because God is possessed with unlimited power. Yadyapi asmakamiyam jagadbimba rachana gurutara saurambha iva bhati tathapi parameshwarasya leela iva kevalayam aparimita shaktitvat. Thus Shankara has proved the omnipotence of Brahman. Next is indivisibility. Ultimate reality is indivisible. It means it is without parts, without limbs. Partlessness of Brahman is proved in the aphorism Krutsna prasakti niravayavatva shabdakopova. On the basis of scriptural authority, Niravayam tu nishkriyam shantam niravadyam niranjanam from Shivetashvatara Upanishad. If Brahman is considered as having parts, then it will be non-eternal. Savayatvecha anitya prasangaha. All the differences which are seen in the Brahman are imagined by ignorance. Avidya kalpita rupa bheda abhyupagamat. This is stated in Brahma Sutra, Shankara Bhashya 2.127. Moon, though perceived as many by man having blood vision, doesn't become really so. Similarly, Brahman becomes subject to all kinds of transformation on account of ignorance. Since the differences like name and form originate from speech, and thus partlessness of Brahman is not violated. Vacharambana matratvacha avidya kalpitasya namarupa bhedasya iti na niravayatvam brahmanaha kupyati. Brahman is beyond all kinds of transformations. It is clearly stated by Shankara that scriptural statements are not talking about real transformation. They establish that all this is in essence one with Brahman, that is beyond all phenomenal process. Nachayam parinama shrutihi parinama pratipadanartha tat pratipattav phala anavagamat sarva vyavaharahina brahmatma bhava pratipadanartha tuesha tat pratifala avagamat. Here the pantheistic outlook of Shankara is seen as he has clearly propounded the unity of Brahman and the world having many differences. This point should be taken into consideration in the context of universal spirituality. Next is eternality and infinity. Spinoza's God is eternal. All God's attributes are eternal. Substance is infinite. If it were finite, it would be limited by other substances and consequently depend on them. Spinoza defines God as being absolutely infinite and substance consisting of infinite attributes, each one of which expresses eternal and infinite essence. Brahman is also called as Nitya and Ananta because its partlessness automatically gets concluded in its infinity. Next is immutability. God's immutability is proved by Spinoza in the proposition God's existence and his essence are one and the same. God or all God's attributes are immutable. If they change as to their existence, they would also change to their essence, which is absurd. Brahman is immutable as it is described as Kutastha Nitya. Now next is perfection. Spinoza's God is without passions and is not affected with any effect of joy or sadness. God loves himself with an infinite intellectual love, that is, the nature of God enjoys infinite perfection. This concept coincides with Aptakamatva and Nispruhatva of Brahman. Next is the theory of causation. In the Sutra Janmadhyasya Yataha, Shankara has proved that Brahman is the cause of diverse universe. Again in Shastra Yonitvad, it is pointed out that even the scriptures have originated from Brahman. Mahataha Rugveda Dehe Shastrasya Aneka Vidyasthana Upabrohitasya Pradipavat Sarvarthavadyotinah Sarvadnya Kalpasya Yonihi Karanam Brahma. In Upasamhara Darshanat Neiti Chetna Shiravadhi, Shankara has cited illustrations of milk and water. Just as milk or water get transformed into curd or ice without any external cause, similarly, Brahman without any external cause creates the world. Brahman is not the Parinami Upadana, but the Vivarta Upadana of the world. It gets proved in the aphorism, Atmani Chaiva Vichitraschahi. Just as magician creates the elephant, horse, etc., similarly, Brahman creates diverse world which is illusory. Here he has resorted to Vivartavada. Creation is same thing like a magic shown by magician. From the Spinoza's definition of substance, it is followed that substance is its own cause. It pertains to the nature of substance to exist. It doesn't depend on another thing. This definition is clear enough to prove that substance exists without any cause and is without beginning. This is nothing but the acceptance of the theory of non-origination, that is Ajativada, propounded by Gaudapada and accepted by Shankara. Shankara says in the introduction of the commentary over Taittiriya Upanishad, what is eternal cannot have a beginning, and whatever has beginning is not eternal. Nahi nityam kenachid arabhyate, loke yad arabdham tad anityam. Spinoza proves that God is the efficient cause of all things by the proposition, from the necessity of divine nature, there must follow infinitely many things in infinitely many modes. Spinoza's God is the immanent cause and not the transitive cause of all things. This matches with the illustration of spider and a cobweb cited by Shankara in the Sutra, Deva Divadapi Loke, to prove that Brahman is the efficient as well as material cause of the universe. Spider oozes the cobweb from its own body. A lotus creeper goes to different lake without any external vehicle. Similarly, Brahman creates the world. तंतुनाभश्च स्वतः एव तंतुं सृजति पद्मिनी च अनपेक्ष किंचित् प्रस्थान साधनं सरोन्तरात् सरोन्तरं प्रतिष्ठते एवं चेतनमपि ब्रह्म अनपेक्ष बाह्यं साधनं स्वतः एव जगत् रक्षति. Just as the water is the material cause of the bubbles rise, exist and dissolve in the water, similarly Brahman is the material cause of the universe. Though not clearly stated, Spinoza's view about the theory of causation is quite similar to that of Vivartavada. Vision of unity. Unity is established by Shankara on the basis of monism. He established unity of Jiva and Brahman. Jagat is just the appearance of Brahman. Therefore, various things are just the manifestations of Brahman due to ignorance. Ignorance is the root cause of the diversity seen in the universe. The whole world is filled with Atman inside and out. It means all the contents of the universe are spiritual in their character. It is said Atmanaha eva dharmaha in the commentary over Taittiriya Upanishad by Shankara. Spinoza has established the unity of God and universe by saying that whatever is in God and nothing can be conceived without God. Except God, there is nothing which is conceived through itself. But modes cannot be conceived without substance. Therefore, everything is in God and nothing can be conceived without it. Unity is also established by the proposition, singular thing which actually exists necessarily involves an eternal and infinite essence of God. And this standpoint of unity also enters into pantheistic monism. Both the philosophers had the vision of unity. Neither Shankara's Brahman nor Spinoza's God is exclusive of everything, but it is inclusive of everything. Shankara clearly states that Atascha Krutsnasya Jagataha Brahma Karyatvad Ananyatvacha over the Brahma Sutra 2.120. For Spinoza too, God includes everything and therefore nothing exists without God. Philosophical method. Spinoza has used geometrical method to reach towards the substance and substance monism. Spinoza assumes that whole world is like geometrical theorem. He has given certain set of definitions, axioms and propositions which automatically takes us to the definite conclusions. Famous illustration used in Kevaladvaita Vedanta is that of Ghatakasha and Mahadakasha. This illustration is cited by Gaudapada in Gaudapada Karika. Ghatadishu pralineshu ghatakashadaya yatha akashe sampraliyante tadvad jiva iha atmani. Same illustration is cited by Shankara many a times in his commentary over Brahma Sutras. There is no soul under bondage which is different from God. Still, just like the association with such conditioning factors such as pots, jars, caves of the mountains, etc., it is assumed that God has association with such limiting adjuncts as body, etc. But ignorance is the root cause of all such discriminations. He says, "Na ishvarad anyah samsari, tathapi dehadi sanghata upadi sambandha ishyate eva, ghatakaraka giri guhadi upadi sambandha iva vyomnaha." This illustration is purely geometrical in nature because geometry is the science of space. Triangle, circle, etc. shapes are formed with the division of space. But ultimately space is one. Just as space is the sole reality in geometry, though there are seen squares, circle, etc. divisions of it. Infinite space can be reached by removing all the figures, lines and planes. This standpoint comes very closer to the Vivartavada of Shankara. Then appearance or illusion. Shankara has used the concept of Maya to attain the coherence between unchanging Brahman and ever-changing world. All the changes seen in the world are justified on the basis of Maya. Avarana and Vikshepa are the two powers of Maya by which truth is covered and different objects are seen instead of real thing. According to Shankara, when the ignorance vanishes, knowledge of soul reality dawns immediately. Spinoza has explained the concept of appearance on the basis of attributes and moods. Particular things are nothing but affections of the attributes of the God, that is moods, wherein the attributes of God find expression in a definite and determinate way. A. Wolf opines that attributes are not regarded as a real, objective characters of substance, but only as our subjective ways of conceiving it. Now the philosophical goal. Shankara's philosophy is experiential and spiritual rather than mere theoretical discussion. As it is said by Eliot D., Advaita Vedanta is religion as much as it is a technical philosophy. It is a way of spiritual realization as well as a system of thought. Aim of Shankara's philosophy is moksha, that is liberation, which comes out of knowledge. Brahman cannot be known by any other pramana. That is, jnanena hi pramanena avagantum ishtam brahma. This is said over the Brahma Sutra 111. Brahma Sakshatkara or moksha is the real goal which is obtained when ignorance, the root cause of the samsara, is eradicated. Brahma avagatirhi purusharthaha nishesha samsara bija avidya anartha nibarhanat. Tasmat brahma vijidnyasitavyam. In Atmabodha it is said that knowledge is the direct means of liberation just as the fire is the direct cause of cooking. Bodhaha anya sadhanebhyaha hi sakshat mokshaika sadhanam. Pakasya vannivat jnanam vina moksho na siddhyati. Spinoza's philosophy also has a concept of human bondage and freedom. His philosophy is practical and spiritual in the sense that it has some practical goal. Knowledge of God is the mind's greatest good. Its greatest virtue is to know God. By the proposition, Spinoza has given an ample scope for the knowledge of the highest, and it is regarded as the greatest virtue of a man. It suffices to prove that Spinoza is opposed to the agnosticism like Shankara. The more each of us is able to achieve this kind of knowledge, the more he is conscious of himself and of God. That is, more the perfect and blessed he is. Concept of salvation is also stated by Spinoza and given the concept of ultimate bliss, which should be the goal of human being. He clearly states that whatever we understand by the third kind of knowledge, that is the essence of the thing, we take pleasure in, and our pleasure is accompanied by the idea of God as a cause. Thus, the knowledge of God is conducive to highest bliss. This is similar with the realization of self, that is Atmanubhuti, and God realization, which is equivalent to moksha. Because for Shankara, moksha is not something to be obtained, it is to be realized. Nahi dadhyadi vikaryam, utpadyam va ghatadi, nityam drushtam loke, napi samskaryo mokshaha. This is explained in the Sutra Tattu Samanvayat. Now observations. Shankara and Spinoza both maintain absolute monism in their philosophical standpoint. Both lean towards pantheistic attitude as they have identified everything with ultimate reality. This outlook of unity is surely favorable for universal spirituality. Spinoza's substance is similar to Shankara's indeterminate Brahman. All the attributes belonging to the ultimate reality are regarded as the essence of the same. Shankara has assumed indeterminate Brahman as the highest reality. Differences in the corporeal forms of God can be the reason of discord in spirituality. Idea of indeterminate reality has given a clear-cut way to reconcile and subsume corporeal forms of gods assumed by all the religions and philosophies. Shankara has used the device of Maya to prove the multiplicity of the world. Spinoza has used the device of modes to solve the problem of one and many. Differences existing in various religions and philosophies can be dissolved on the basis of this concept that is, they are the manifestations of the same reality. Both have adopted the logical standpoint to prove their philosophies. For Shankara, scriptural authority is of prime importance, but he has given importance to Tarka as well. Spinoza has proved everything on the basis of geometrical method. It means universality is not just a matter of faith, but can be proved on the basis of reason too. Both the philosophers have given importance to knowledge as a means of ultimate goal, which is pure bliss. Proper knowledge of self and its unity with the ultimate reality, and understanding that all are one with ultimately real principle is the goal of philosophy. Now to sum up, though both these philosophers are of different temperaments and from different geographical areas, they meet at one point, that is absolute monism, and their method in reaching this is strikingly similar. Absolute monism of Shankara and Spinoza rule out the appearing differences, and by saying that ultimate reality is the essence of everything, propound equality, and it has shown a way to the universal spirituality. Comparative study of religion and philosophy should be the part of education in order to create all-inclusive universal spirituality. It not only gives us an idea about the existing similarities, but also a new outlook that all religions and philosophies ponder upon the same ultimate reality, only their languages, methods, and standpoints are different.
Thank you, Ms. Shakuntala. If there is time, we will, because already we are running short of time, other paper readers are there. So I would now request Dr. Niranjan Jeena. His paper is on the concept of global fraternity as reflected in the Vedas.
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devakinandanaya cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namana. Esteemed chair of the session, learned delegates, scholars, and my fellow delegates. I would like to pay a paper entitled on the concept of global fraternity as reflected in the Atharvaveda, as reflected in the Veda. Today, the entire human race is marching towards globalization. What is the factor which promotes these people to think over it? Why it is needed for global fraternity? To answer these queries, we must go to our Vedic literature, where we find the Vedas replete with glorious hymns and messages on this noble aspect of human existence as a code of conduct. Nothing more potential, pure, positive, and pragmatic can be thought on the context beyond the teaching of Vedas. What we find in later texts of any language is nothing but the re-invocation and affirmation of the vision of Vedic rishis. The Vedic literature shows very well understanding of the concept of fraternity, which is very well reflected in the Vedic life. In a way, they maintained fraternity by sitting even in the midst of forest. Thus, Vedic seers prayed to the deities to maintain peace and harmony among people. Perhaps they were well aware of the fact that selfishness or enmity leads to Asuric influences, creating chaotic situation and malignancy, fetching them nothing but severe catastrophe. Viewed from the angle of Vedic text, the concept of global fraternity in its rudimentary form may be synthesized and treated in the following discussion. Sharing the pleasure and pain of others is a stepping stone to enter into the temple of humanism. It may be treated as fraternity, but in the modern age, we all are here to fulfill our individual need, and in turn, we fulfill the need of the existence. Moreover, there are different organizations like social, commercial, political, whose stated objective is to foster such brotherhood, but at times it is frustrated. An absence of a feeling of oneness is bound to wreak havoc in the society. The concept of global fraternity has coined from the Veda. The Muhopanishad 6:7-2 speaks that the whole world is but one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In the later period, the same concept has been repeated by Narayana in Panchatantra, that is 1:371, 5:373. That is the sloka, Ayam Nijo Paraveti Ganana Laghuchetasam Udara Charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. If we look at the verse of Rigveda 1:164-46, which may make more clear about our concept of oneness, to quote the verse, Indrang Mitrang Varunam Agnimahu Ratha Divyang Sasuparna Garutman Ekang Sat Vipraha Baudha Vadanti Agning Yamang Matarishwanamahu. To make the concept more clear, we may say that fraternity is a social philosophy emanating from a spiritual understanding that the whole of humanity is made of one life energy. If there is one Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, who resides in all, how can we be different from each other? How can a drop of the ocean be different from the ocean? It is entirely impossible. Leave aside this, if we look into the Hindu philosophy, the mind and body are the servants of the soul or Atma, which is the servant of Paramatma. Just as the inseparability between the two, all the organizations or the people are one, since they are bound by the ideals of peace and brotherhood. It is built on symbiosis, reciprocity, and a convergence leading to the welfare of the people. In these sequences, the concept of fraternity spread over later Vedic literature. Moreover, the vision of universal love and compassion is profound in Hindu mythology, which focuses on the absolute unity of the inhabitants of the cosmos. The unity cannot be acquired without harmony and peace. These teachings are universal and timeless. Let us focus on the concept of global fraternity as reflected in the Vedic literature through the hymns of the Vedas. The hymns of the Rig Veda gives the clue, as if the Rigvedic society was highly civilized. To quote the verse, Rig Veda 5:65, Ajyeshtasu akanishtasu ete sang bhrataru vyabrudah saubhagaya yuva pita swapa rudra esam sudu gha prisni sudina marudbhyah. The mantra intends that all men in this world are expected to remain in a healthy atmosphere to have and coexistence. All are brothers. Somebody is neither older nor younger to anybody by birth. According to the norm of equality, all should march forward in the direction of the prosperity and purposefully manner regulated life. In this way, there are numbers of verses which speak about the global fraternity. To quote the Rigveda mantra 10:191-24, Samaniva akutihi samana hridayanivaha samanamastu vamana yathavasu sahasati. Let your mind be the same and your heart be united. Apart from this, there are hymns which says that confirmation of global universality. There is a mantra, Rigveda 1:89-1, Anu Bhadra Kratavo Yantu Vishwataha, like this. Another verse of the Rigveda 1:89-8, Bhadram Karne Bhi Srunuyam Devaha Bhadram Pasyama Kshavir Jajatraha Stirei Rangi Stustuvang Satanuvir Vyasema Devahitam Yadayu. Here the sages pray for universal noble things by saying, Oh people, let us hear good speeches by our ears. Let us see good things by our eyes. Let us let our bodies and limbs be settled. In the verse Rig Veda 196, Swasti na Indro Bridhasravaha Swasti na Pusa Vishwadeva Swasti na Starchei Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu. Here the prayer is uttered for universal welfare and not for any individual. The sages proclaim, let the glorified Indra, the omniscient Pusa, noble Garuda and Brihaspati provide peace, pleasure and prosperity, etc. Another verse of the Rig Veda 199 that speaks about Sangnu Mitraha Sang Varunaha Sannu Bhavati Aryama Sanna Indru Brihaspati Sannu Vishnu Rurukramaha. In this way, there are ample references which speak about global fraternity. In the same sequences, if we come to the Yajurveda, we see the peace, how there is a famous mantra like Dahu Santihi, Antarikshang Santihi, Prithvi Santihi, Apaha Santihi, Osadhaya Santihi, Vanaspataya Santi, Vishwadeva Santihi, Brahma Santi, Krudham Santi, Sarvam Santi, Santireva Santi, Sama Santi Redhi. So, in this way, there are another mantras also in the Yajurveda. Now, let me go to the Atharvaveda. When we come to the Atharvaveda, it is a very famous sutta. There is Samanasyani mantra is there. There is many references which speaks about the social harmony, peace, the understanding how to social behavior, how to behave in a proper manner among the family members. Like there is a mantra of the Atharvaveda. There is Anubrataha Pitu Putra Matra Bhavatu Sangmanaha Jayapati Madhumating Bhachang Vadatu Santivam. In this way, there is another mantra, Atharvaveda 1962, that is Priyang Ma Krino Devesu Priyang Rajasu Ma Kruno Priyang Sarvasya Pasyata Uta Sudra Utarye. This hymn aims at to global fraternity at large. The devotee states, let myself be dear to the gods, the kings, the Vaishyas and the Sudras and to everybody. There is a verse, it is a famous verse, that is Atharvaveda 12 Kanda, that is the Bhumi Sukta of the Atharvaveda, where the seer is praying towards the Mother Earth, like Mata Bhumi Putraham Prithivya. I am the son of the earth. So this type of obligation, indebtedness and universal thinking, fraternity, all over spread all over Vedic literature. There is another mantra in the Bhumi Sukta, Satyang Bruhat Diksha Tapo. This mantra also intend about the global fraternity and universal peace and harmony. So, there are ample references that I skip to conclude my paper, which to sum up the foregoing discussion, it appears that through the auspicious thought, the Vedic seers prayed to the deities for a healthy life. Many verses states seers desire that people should be one-minded, one-intentioned, and should give up enmity from their mind. The seers also expect to secure harmony and peace among people, which lead to a healthy social life. But the coin has to other side also. It is especially in the Atharvaveda, where the blacker side of human mind is revealed. That is called that abhichara, which they much speak of the less human emotions in the human beings that tend not only to harm others but also to destroy them. As the purpose of the Atharvaveda is to appease, to bless and to curse, it becomes obvious why the Samhita of the four Vedas is said to the Veda of the common man. The Atharvaveda has depicted we may say all the possible relationships between a man and a man caused by various emotions, human, less human, and a human. Hence, it can be stated that in this critical juncture of the present age, by maintaining harmony and integrity, there can be established global fraternity and friendship among people, which the references of the Veda, entire Veda, speak sufficiently. To be more precise, it can be stated that protection of humanism is the highest goal of humanity. It adds magnanimity to human life. It is the celestial desire that man, the son of immortality, should be a real man, is the true sense of term. Manur Bhava, that is Rigveda 10:53-6. The essence of Veda is devoted to the human race. The knowledge of Veda is a blessing that helps the descent of ever-longed perpetual global fraternity through intimate fraternity. Thank you very much.
Ms. Rupa, Department of Sanskrit Vyakarana, Tirur, Shankaracharya University, Tirur. Her topic is Gandhian Doctrines and Universal Spirituality.
Good morning, all of you. Respected Chair, distinguished scholars, and my dear friends. My topic is Gandhian Doctrines and Universal Spirituality. Here, throughout my paper, I stress the point of Gandhi's view on spirituality based on the doctrines like God, religion, etc. Let me read my paper. Arsha Bharata, or India, is a land of religions and philosophies from the time immemorial. The intellectual pursuits and human curiosities of various kinds, no matter whether it is art or science, material or spiritual, musical or divine, which can be successfully sold here. To live in this world is an art. Those who are specialized in this art can lead a peaceful life. Their life is ideal to masses. Such people are rarely born. Gandhi, being such a phenomena, led an ideal life of peace and harmony, dedicated to non-violence and truth, in the midst of various types of pain and unrest. Gandhi was such a phenomena. His life was deeply moral, highly spiritual, and essentially ideal. How he developed such a morale, how he mastered highest of the willpower. His various loving tools and weapons are briefly summarized below to uncover his vision of universal spirituality. This paper is an earnest attempt to look into Gandhian doctrines as an end and means for universal peace and harmony. His concepts and doctrines seems to be as a panacea for all types of present-day socio-economic and religious ills and disharmonies like social injustice, economic exploitation, and religious conflicts and disputes. The present day or contemporary questions and necessity of Gandhian doctrines. What we are seeing today, can there be a meaningful talk between rich and poor, whether it is G7 or G15 or any other types or union? What is happening to the rainforests of Brazil, Indonesia, or even in Kerala? What is happening to the polluted rivers, air, and green forests? What is the response of poisonous soil and endosulfur? What is the response of industrial electronics and nuclear waste? What is the reaction of acid rain? Where is the reach of global warming? What is the position of ozone layers? What about global terrorism? What is the solution? Day by day, animals and birds are disappearing. Natural resources are shrinking. To what extent global actions are successful? Are we happy with them? Where is the true happiness? The necessity of Gandhian doctrines. We can look to our surrounding. What we can see, what we are seeing. The world consciousness is shifting from material pursuits to spiritual pursuits. More and more people are giving up meat, alcohol, and tobacco. More youngsters are attending temples and church ceremonies. Awareness of ecological balance and cultural values are increasing. Family values are becoming respectful. There is a general awareness of something called sacred, the holy, divine, or the God, something which everlasting, which cannot be put together by human mind or corrupted by human greed. This is the necessity of the time or present day necessity. The scientific and electronic world of information technology is strictly incapable of solving the problem of the younger mind. Gandhian doctrines and their universality. On God. Gandhian concept of God is of peculiar nature and is very popular. He occasionally said about God and God vision. He said, God is, was, and shall be. God for him is not an external entity, but an abiding presence in human heart. He thought that God impels man to do the right. He believed the sum total of all that lives is God. It is similar to the Upanishadic version, Sarvam Khal Vidam Brahma. The greatest source of strength for Gandhi was his absolute faith in God. He felt that he was only a tiny instrument in his hands, who alone knew how to make use of him and in what manner and to what extent. Thus, an atmosphere is created to look into the world and vision of our rishis who have satisfied all their wants or eliminated their desires and have attained a peaceful mind of immense pleasure and grace. So, it is a context or time to look into the thoughts and philosophies of our great rishis. Gandhi was such a great rishi of quite modern times. His view was nothing more than the Upanishadic wisdoms expressing universality of the souls and its eternal nature. Regarding his philosophy and discipline, it is strictly religion. Regarding his vision, it is beyond all religions. It is the truth of the truth. It is nothing but the universal grace and bliss to eternal love and pleasure. Gandhi said, I have never found him lacking in response. I have found him nearest at hand when the horizon seemed darkest in my ordeals in goals, when it was not all smooth sailing for me. I can't recall a single moment in my life when I had a sense of desertion by God. He continues, I see it as purely benevolent, for I can see that in the midst of death life persists, in the midst of untruth, truth persists, in the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence, I gather that God is life, truth and light. He is love, He is supreme good, supreme God. Again, God is that indefinable something which we all feel but which we do not know. To me, God is ethics and morality. God is fearlessness. God is the sources of light and life, and yet He is above and beyond all these. Once he wrote, there are innumerable definitions of God because His manifestations are innumerable. This view is nothing more than the Upanishadic version of Satyam Jnanam Brahma, Sarvam Khal Vidam Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma, or Ayatatma Brahma. He assumed to be many, etc. On religion, Gandhian view of religions can be explained with the help of following words. We must help Hindu to become a better Hindu, a Mussalman to become a better Mussalman, and a Christian to become a better Christian. We must eradicate from our midst the secret pride that our religion is more true and that another is less so. Our attitude towards all religion must be clear and sincere. These words resemble the Upanishadic version of Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. These words are often quoted to point out Gandhian view on conversion. Regarding prayer, he believed that prayer is the soul and essence of religion, and therefore prayer must be the very core of life of a man, for it is the only means of bringing about discipline and harmony in our daily life. Gandhiji said, by religion, I do not mean formal religion or customary religion, but that religion which brings us face to face with our Maker. Religions are different roads converging upon the same point. On another context, he said, there is no religion higher than truth and righteousness. He clarifies his notion of universal spirituality as follows. Rama is not known only by 1,000 names. His name is innumerable and he is the same whether we call him Allah, Rahim, Razak, the bread giver, or any name that comes from the heart of a true devotee. The universality of Brahman is indicated through these words underlining the Upanishadic truth of Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Though Gandhi remained essentially a Hindu, he studied with reverence the scriptures of other religions. It is visible and summarized in the following words. The lefty ethics of the Sermon on the Mount, like the spirit of brotherhood taught by Islam, became part of his life, and so did the message of love, gentleness and peace in Buddhism. Regarding Gandhian view on Christianity, Nehru observed that Gandhiji has practiced Christianity as advised by Christ rather than any other present-day followers in the West. Gandhiji's views on non-believers. Gandhian view of God and religion became more clear when we come to know that what he said about non-believers. He said, a man without faith in God is like a drop thrown out of the ocean and bound to perish. On forecasting and prediction. Often religion and spirituality are merged with miracles, sometimes curses and blessings. The activities of pseudo-spiritualists are confusing and misleading. See how Gandhi was truthful in this respect. His frank observation and saying is a remedial measure and truthful weapon. I do not want to foresee the future. I am concerned with taking care of the present. God has given me no control over the moment following. Thus, his doctrines guides to live in present without wasting time in the meaningless exercise of knowing future. On superhuman powers. Many believe spirituality is inseparable with superhuman powers and miracles. Some people spend the whole life to get supernatural powers. During his time, some people began to see Gandhi with godlike powers. Some described him as an incarnation of God. But his view is very frank and clear. Regarding superhuman power, he described, the only virtue I want to claim is truth and non-violence. I lay no claim to superhuman powers. I want none. Here, the norm I want none is an ideal vision and doctrine regarding his norm of universal spirituality. Thus, later people came to know that he was above all miracles that never appeared and never will going to appear. In this context, it is quite meaningful to remember the words of the well-known scientists of the last century. After 100 years, nobody is going to believe that a man like that Gandhi was lived with muscle, veins and bones. Nowadays, spiritualism is confused with miracles and supernatural powers and siddhis. In this context, his vision is a guiding light for the seekers of knowledge and truth in this universe to keep away from those pseudo-spiritualists. Thus, his version universal spirituality is explained. Loving tools and weapons of Gandhi. The main tools and weapons applied by Gandhi are truth, non-violence and satyagraha for the purpose which he wanted and the change he desired. Truth and non-violence. Gandhi said, Ahimsa is not the goal, truth is the goal. But we have no means of realizing truth in human relationship except through the practice of Ahimsa. Ahimsa is my God and truth is my God. When I look for Ahimsa, truth says, find it out through me. When I look for truth, Ahimsa says, find it out through me. Later, he follows, I have nothing new to teach the world. Truth and non-violence are as old as hills. It resembles the well-known saying, Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. To him, non-violence in its dynamic condition means conscious suffering. Thus, he emphasized the Hindu Buddha doctrine of Ahimsa paramo dharma to popularize his notion. He frankly admitted that the tool of truth and non-violence are as old as hills. Satyagraha. Gandhi says a satyagraha struggle is impossible without capital in the shape of character. A satyagrahi bids goodbye to fear. Regarding the application of this tool, Gandhi said, I admit it is painful to climb, but the pain of it is positive pleasure for me. Thus, his principle is in favor if taking pain for the realization of truth or universal principle. He believed with Satya combined with Ahimsa, you can bring the world to your feet. These two were his weapons to conquer the world. He said, means and ends are convertible terms in my philosophy of life. It means the truth is the end and the means is ahimsa, and both are convertible to each other. This is for him, both the end and means should be pure. He believed violence breeds further violence. So the path to truth should be of non-violence as truth itself. How to practice or train this weapon? Much of the criticism against Gandhism is regarding its impracticability. Regarding its application, he said, there is no royal road except through living the creed in your life, which must be a living sermon. Of course, the expression in one's own life presupposes great study, tremendous perseverance, and through cleansing of one's self of all the impurities. If for mastering of the physical science you have to devote a whole lifetime, how many lifetime may be needed to mastering the greatest spiritual force then mankind has known? But why worry even if it means several lifetimes? For if this is the only permanent thing in life, if this is the only thing that concerns, that whatever effort you bestow in mastering, it is well spent. Seek yet first the kingdom of heaven, and everything shall be added unto you. The kingdom of heaven is ahimsa. These lines reveal his uncompromising attitude towards the notion of ahimsa. He is ready to go to an infinite extent, upholding this notion of non-violence with an uncompromising attitude. His faith is stronger than his existence. He has surrendered before this notion for him is nothing but God. His vision on universality. What was Gandhian outlook towards world? Gandhi said, my goal is friendship with world, and I can combine the greatest love with the greatest opposition to wrong. He observed, there is no limit to extending our neighbors across state-made frontiers. Once he remarked, East and West can only really meet. His vision, action and message. Gandhi said, my strength lies in asking people to do nothing that I have not tried repeatedly in my own life. This is the doctrine of practical spirituality in Gandhian life. Quoting Gita, he said, in the language of Gita, I want to live at peace with both friends and foes. Regarding his message, he said, my life is its own message. I conclude. From the foregoing discussion on various doctrines of Gandhian thought and philosophy, it is not difficult to see. He had mastered all the philosophies of both East and West, and he developed a philosophy of his own in a modified version according to the circumstances that existed in his time. His philosophy was a way of life rather than an academic discipline. A deep analysis reveals the fact that what he modified as his view is nothing but the Upanishad version of our rishis who taught and dedicated for universal peace and harmony. They believe in the universality of Brahman and merging Jivatma with Paramatma as a salvation for the eternal and everlasting peace and pleasure. He held that good works lead to purity of mind and so to the vision of God. I am endeavoring to see God through service of humanity, for I know God is neither in heaven nor down below but in everyone. Nowadays, his thoughts and methods are subjected to studies and research throughout the world. His view can be summarized as, let the whole Hindu scriptures can be turned to ashes, Hinduism will survive as far as the first verse of Ishavasya will exist. Thank you.
We have heard 3 papers in this session covering 3 topics: Absolute Monism of Shankara and Spinoza, a comparative study by Ms. Shakuntala Gowde, the concept of global fraternity as reflected in the Vedas by Dr. Niranjan Jena, and Gandhian doctrines and universal spirituality by Ms. V. Rupa. Now, however much we try to compare the philosophers of East and West, we should not forget one fact, that there is certainly a dividing line between the East and the West. Unlike in the West, where philosophy is read for deriving intellectual pleasure, Philosophy in India aims at ordering of life and provides guidance of action. Sitting at the helm, it directs our course through the changes and chances of the world. When philosophy is alive, it is not possible to distinguish it from the life of people. The great philosophical thinkers, they evolved their ideas in the process of their life history. Hence, it is but proper not only to reverence them, but also acquire their spirit. The names of Yajnavalkya and Gargi, Buddha and Mahavira, Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, Vyasa, Shankara, Ramanuja, all these should not be considered as themes for the historian, but they are types of personality. With them, philosophy is a worldview based on reflection and experience. This is what Radhakrishnan writes, I quote, "Thought, when it thinks itself out to the end, it becomes religion by being lived and tested by the supreme test of life," unquote. At the same time, the discipline of philosophy is for the fulfillment of a religious vocation. If religion is the practical side of philosophy in India, then philosophy is the theoretical aspect of religion. Religion in India has given a clear direction and purpose to philosophical thought. It is only for this reason that Indian philosophy is not merely a way of thought, but also a way of life. So therefore, comparing a Western philosopher, it is in my humble opinion, can only be in the conceptual level. But when you talk of eschatological views, I don't think none of the Western philosophers could come or even can ever be thought of, be compared to even the Indian philosopher. Only in the conceptual level you can try to find similarities. And that way, I think as she herself mentioned in one of answering her questions, I think she had done full justice to her paper. It is only at the conceptual level. Ms. Shakuntala had done a very good justification of the topic selected. I thank Ms. Shakuntala for that. The second paper was on the concept of global fraternity reflected in the Vedas by Dr. Niranjan. Of course, he quoted many suktas from the Rig Veda, sentences from all the Vedas, and also he did not fail to quote that about the black magic used in the Atharva Veda also, but that is also, just as we say Nakalanjam Bhakshayet in the Veda, why a person went and asked, what is Kalanja Bhakshana? Then the shopkeeper said, no, you are not supposed to, you are a Brahmin, you cannot ask this question. Then he said, no, the Vedas has said what is to be abandoned. I have to know what is to be abandoned, so please show me what is Kalanja Bhakshana. Like that, black magic also should be known in order, how to eradicate it, know what is black magic, that also should be known. So in that context, I think he also mentioned about the black magic of Atharva Veda, and he gave profuse quotations from the Vedic statements to show how people all should be one-minded, and also this is the we have to imbibe the spirit of the Vedic seers, to have the single-mindedness and the cooperation and the oneness that which is reflected in almost the speculative and the ritualistic section of the Vedas too. I thank Dr. Niranjan for his excellent presentation. And then the paper on Gandhian doctrines and universal spirituality. She highlighted the social problems that are prevalent at present and the need to follow the Gandhian virtues for the upliftment of the society from the shackles of all evil. She also highlighted that non-violence and truth were the two superhuman powers of which Gandhiji possessed in abundance and by which he was able to win the whole of humanity. And I thank all the paper presenters for their sincere effort to justify and present a paper justifying the theme of this seminar. I also thank the learned audience for their enthusiastic participation and exchange of ideas. Last but not the least, I thank Professor Rana and organizers of this conference for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.